New race data has just leaked, and it proves Lewis Hamilton was right all along. What did the data show? And why did Charles Leclerc's engineer go silent when Hamilton confronted him? Today, we reveal the telemetry, the internal fallout at Ferrari, and how one line from Hamilton before Brazil has now triggered a full-blown technical scandal. Because if the numbers back Hamilton, then Ferrari isn't just guilty of mismanagement, they may have been caught playing favorites. Subscribe if you believe Lewis deserves the truth. The Brazilian Grand Prix began with tension already thick in the Ferrari garage. After a string of inconsistent weekends, all eyes were on how the team would respond. For Hamilton, this was personal. He had arrived at Interlagos with quiet determination not just to win, but to prove a point. From the outside, it looked like just another race weekend. But behind the scenes, Lewis had already begun asking difficult questions about the data coming from his car. And what he saw didn't match what he felt in the cockpit. From the very first practice laps, Hamilton was sending feedback that puzzled his engineers. He reported understeer in high-speed corners, erratic rear grip, and inconsistent energy deployment, especially in Sector 2. His telemetry, however, showed no major anomalies. Ferrari systems insisted everything was within acceptable parameters. But Hamilton wasn't buying it. He's raced too long, won too much, and fought through too many setups to mistake a failing car for bad luck. Check Leclerc's baseline, he reportedly told his race engineer after FP2. That one sentence would soon trigger a chain reaction. According to multiple sources inside the team, it was during that internal check that engineers realized something uncomfortable. Leclerc's car was indeed running with a slightly different rear suspension configuration. On paper, it was legal. It had been signed off by both sides of the garage. But the setup gave Charles more rotation at mid-corner and cleaner exits, something Hamilton's version struggled to replicate. When Hamilton reviewed the comparative overlays between the two cars, he didn't say much. He didn't need to. The data spoke for itself. Race day arrived. The tension had become impossible to hide. Leclerc's engineer was overheard speaking in more cautious tones than usual. Hamilton remained focused, but his body language was different, calm, composed, but heavy with purpose. Everyone in the garage knew that if anything went wrong, the spotlight would be brutal. And when Hamilton's car began losing pace from lap 15, the narrative collapsed. His tires began overheating early. Deployment settings failed to stabilize. Then, by lap 35, Ferrari called him in. A precautionary retirement, they called it. But what really triggered the scandal was what happened after the race. Hamilton's camp obtained a full debrief of the weekend's technical sheets, and what they found confirmed every suspicion. The suspension geometry between both cars wasn't identical. Aero mapping had been updated on Leclerc's side first. Even brake cooling profiles were optimized differently. None of it was illegal, but none of it was equal either. When that analysis hit the media, Ferrari had no answer. Leclerc's engineer refused to comment. The silence was deafening. When the telemetry comparisons between Hamilton and Leclerc became public, it sent shockwaves through the paddock. Analysts and former engineers pored over every overlay. The sector times alone didn't tell the full story. It was the micro behaviors of the car that revealed the truth. Leclerc's Ferrari rotated earlier at corner entry, carried more speed through the apex, and required fewer steering corrections. That wasn't driver talent. That was geometry, suspension rake, damper stiffness, and rear end balance. Subtle adjustments then Formula One translate to tenths and trust. For most drivers, the differences would have gone unnoticed. But Hamilton's driving style relies on a car that reacts to precision, not chaos. He senses load transfer, grip limits, and aerodynamic shifts with near superhuman sensitivity. So when his car wasn't giving him feedback, when it refused to pivot or respond cleanly through mid-speed turns, he knew something was off. The engineers blamed track conditions, tire wear, even brake glazing. But Hamilton saw through it. He asked for overlays. He demanded transparency. And that's when the comparisons began. What stood out most were the energy deployment patterns. Leclerc's car was delivering power in a more linear fashion, meaning fewer wheel spin events and better tire preservation. Meanwhile, Hamilton's car showed spikes, inconsistent delivery that caused traction loss out of key corners. In Brazil, where Sector 2 is brutal on the rear axle, that was fatal. It destroyed Hamilton's tires by lap 15, and the team knew it. But rather than admit a split in setup philosophy, they chalked it up to individual driving preferences. The scandal wasn't just in the data, it was in the response. When Hamilton's camp presented these findings internally, the tone shifted. No one denied the numbers. No one disputed the analysis. But no one could explain why Leclerc received the updated rear geometry package first. Ferrari's technical director called it rotation optimization, a vague term meant to neutralize what was in reality a competitive advantage. Whether by intention or habit, Leclerc was being prioritized, and Hamilton had the receipts. What makes this even more damaging is how Hamilton handled it. He didn't leak it to the press. He didn't call out names in interviews. He let the facts speak. And in doing so, he showed not just mastery on track, but control of it. In a sport dominated by politics and perception, he weaponized truth. While others shouted for attention, he let the data whisper the story. And that story was damning. Ferrari had compromised equality in their own garage and got caught. The moment the data was verified, the atmosphere inside Ferrari shifted. In the days following the Brazilian Grand Prix, the normally confident chatter among race engineers turned into measured silences. Technical briefings became shorter. Communication between Hamilton's side of the garage and Leclerc's team grew visibly colder. While Ferrari tried to keep the facade of unity, the truth was clear to anyone paying attention. Something had fractured, and it began with what Leclerc's engineer did not say. During the race weekend, Leclerc's race engineer had been remarkably reserved when questioned about comparative setups. Normally quick to justify technical choices or to brush off rumors, this time he deflected, avoided specifics, and refused post-race media access. That silence spoke volumes. According to internal sources, Hamilton's team had asked for full visibility on Leclerc's pre-race development path. The request was met with selective transparency. Only portions of the data were made available. No explanation was given for why Leclerc's car received priority suspension adjustments before final practice. What made the situation more delicate was Leclerc's position. Publicly, he maintained the company line. "We both had the same opportunity this weekend." But behind closed doors, there was discomfort. He knew the paddock was watching him not just as a driver, but as a perceived beneficiary of favoritism. Whether he agreed with the setup split or not, the optics were damaging. And for someone like Leclerc, whose Ferrari journey has been defined by loyalty and image, the idea that his engineer might have withheld crucial performance tweaks from Hamilton was a nightmare. Within the engineering department, tensions peaked. Engineers who had long worked exclusively with Charles were now being pulled into cross-analysis for Hamilton. Questions began surfacing about whether development was being steered unconsciously toward one driving style. A few brave voices suggested reevaluating the internal feedback loop. Others stayed silent, afraid of triggering deeper conflict. Ferrari had invited a second alpha into their garage when they signed Hamilton. But what they hadn't prepared for was what would happen when both alphas demanded accountability. The leadership team, including Fred Vasseur, remained largely absent in public statements. No press conference, no technical clarification, only a recycled message about equal treatment and continuous improvement. But that message was no longer credible. Not when screenshots of telemetry overlays were circulating online. Not when Hamilton's fans and even neutral analysts were demanding answers. For the first time in years, Ferrari wasn't in control of its own narrative. And Leclerc, once the undisputed face of the Scuderia, now looked trapped in a garage torn in two. Lewis Hamilton has never been a driver to act on impulse. His career has been defined not just by brilliance on track, but by a rare ability to manage chaos with strategy and silence with power. That's what makes this moment so dangerous for Ferrari. Hamilton is no longer quietly observing. He's calculating. And every move from here on out, every comment, every glance, every public appearance is part of a broader message. I gave you everything. You gave me imbalance. And now, he's starting to speak with precision. After Brazil, Hamilton's posture changed. Not emotionally, he remained respectful, polished, professional. But in subtle ways, the shift was visible. He skipped the usual Ferrari debrief at the hospitality suite. He opted out of select team media rounds. And then, during a post-race interview, he dropped a line that rippled through the sport. "We'll have to assess how aligned we really are, not just in strategy, but in intention." That phrase wasn't random. It was a signal. He was drawing a line between performance issues and something deeper: trust. The fallout inside Maranello was immediate. Ferrari's leadership called an emergency review meeting on Monday. Engineers were instructed to avoid media contact. The PR department scrambled to draft a new communications strategy around driver synergy. But the timing couldn't have been worse. A planned update package was set to debut the following race, one that had reportedly been shaped heavily by Leclerc's feedback. Now, the risk was clear. If it worked well on Leclerc's side but not on Hamilton's, the accusations of bias would explode. For Hamilton, this isn't just about setups or telemetry. It's about the principle Ferrari claimed to uphold when he signed: equal machinery, equal say, equal pursuit of victory. That promise now lies in ruins. And it's not the first time. Hamilton knows the cost of fighting internal battles. He lived it in his early McLaren days, and even during his tense final seasons at Mercedes. But this time, it's different. This time, the world is watching in real time, with data, context, and years of racing wisdom on his side. Sponsors are beginning to pay attention. Media outlets across Europe are requesting clarity. And perhaps most notably, former drivers, including championship legends, have begun backing Hamilton publicly. Lewis knows what a car should feel like, one said. If he says it's wrong, it's wrong. In a sport where credibility is currency, that kind of support turns whispers into thunder. Ferrari now faces a decision: either restore parity and rebuild trust, or prepare for an off-season of damage control and internal revolt.